Do you ever wonder, what if things were different? Did you make the right choices? If you could go back, knowing what you know now, would you do things differently? That's what we'll be looking into in today's video. We'll be going over the 1988 manga and anime series, Berserk, written by Kentaro Miura. A spoiler warning for all things Berserk if you're new to the franchise. I highly recommend you check out the manga. It's only 360 chapters and is a phenomenal read. Just be ready to be depressed, both by the sadness present in the story and how it will likely never conclude. With that out of the way, let's get down to business. I believe a general synopsis of Berserk is needed for context. The story revolves around Guts and his journey to find himself, what he values in life. His life is about tragedy. He was born from a woman hanged from a tree. He was adopted by an abusive mercenary band leader, Gambino. He was sodomized by that same leader's friend for pocket change. He grew up on the battlefield, only knowing how to swing a sword. He fights because he's told to, but also because he needs someone to give him validation. When he's forced to kill his adoptive father, he's on his own. He goes into wars for money. He needs it for survival. He fights to live. He has no home. He has no friends. But a well-known mercenary band takes note of his skills. Their name is the Band of the Hawk, led by their young, white-haired leader, Griffith. Griffith and Guts have a duel to decide Guts' fate. If Griffith wins, Guts must serve as a soldier for the group. Guts loses, and is now a member of the Band of the Hawk. The story progresses, and Guts becomes a valuable asset to the Hawks, and recognizes Griffith as an exceptional leader. This admiration then turns to friendship. Griffith and Guts share a brotherly connection. This is noted by Casca, the former right hand of Griffith, and many other members of the Hawks. They go through many battles, winning every single one of them, raising the reputation each time for the group. They are an unbeatable force. The more and more fame they acquire, the closer they get to nobility, and Griffith's dream of a kingdom draws nearer. Griffith seems like the perfect person to be king. He's intelligent, caring, poised, loved by all, an example of the perfect being. However, there's a turning point scene in the series. At a staircase, we see Griffith giving a short speech on the concept of friendship. Griffith doesn't see soldiers as friends. To be a friend is to be a man who follows his own dream, even if it conflicts with his own. To be a true friend to Griffith, a man must be equal to him in every single way. The dramatic irony is, Griffith thinks of Guts as his equal.
Well, my friend, I want to ask you to kill a man for me.
Right from the man's mouth, Griffith values Guts as his friend. This should have been so clear to our main character. Griffith wouldn't risk his life for just a mere soldier, risking his life fighting a demon like Zod. But to Guts, in his perspective, he feels he doesn't live up to that definition of friendship Griffith describes. Griffith sees Guts as an equal, but Guts does not. But what is equal? Guts himself doesn't even know how to answer that question, so he wishes to leave to find that answer. And here we are. Everything comes to a head in this scene. After all the struggles, battles, bonding, and when our heroes can finally enjoy the fruits of their labor, we come at this impasse. Guts versus Griffith, a symbolic reincorporation of what started their friendship, will now be the end of it. Judo's words perfectly summarize this moment.
Now that it's come this far, there's no turning back.
There's no turning back from here. The conditions are set by Griffith. If Guts wants to leave, he must win a duel for his freedom. This echoes back to when Griffith said duels should be like the ones they had as children, sporting, full of vigor and passion. Well, at that time, something they both agreed upon, and it sounded like a fond memory. But looking at this scene, nobody wants this. This isn't a battle between bickering adolescents, but a battle between two adults with their own pride on the line. Both characters are completely focused in the here and now. There's a brief moment where we see inside Griffith's mind. Griffith acknowledges Guts' expression. He has no anger, no malice. He's simply in the present, like he was nothing. As the audience, we are always in the perspective of Guts, but for this rare moment, we are in the perspective of Griffith, a person who is trying to understand his best friend's reasoning. It's a very complex form of dramatic irony. We know why Guts wants to leave, but do we know if Griffith understands why Guts wants to leave? What we do know is that Griffith cares deeply for Guts, but he also cares about his pride. We see him consider going for a non-deadly blow. He's his best friend after all. But he cements his resolve. He must kill Guts if he aims to win. Snow drops, and Griffith lunges. Guts swings his sword. Griffith aims for the parry, but Guts slices through the rapier with ease and rests his giant sword on Griffith's shoulder. He collapses, shocked at his defeat, and is emasculated. Guts leaves without turning back. He thinks to himself that this duel was only a mere stumble in Griffith's path to greatness. He'll get up, dust himself off, and keep going for his dream. Griffith is still, motionless, and we see Casca, who would normally rush to Griffith's aid, shout for Guts to come back. To me, this is the most important event in all of Berserk. After this scene, everything goes downhill. Griffith goes to Princess Charlotte's room and takes her virginity in the middle of the night. This leads to his arrest and eventual torture by the king and his men. The Band of the Hawk were also disgraced and labeled enemies of the state. After 1 year, Guts returns, and with the help of the remainder of the Band of the Hawk, which isn't many by the way, they save Griffith, who is a shell of his former self. His body is damaged beyond repair, his tongue removed, castrated, tendons slashed, crippled. Griffith has a moment of hatred towards Guts. He reaches for his throat, but a combination of his own physical weakness and love for Guts keeps him docile. Griffith is a weak man now, somewhere he had never thought he'd be. He was at the pinnacle of his dream. He was there, he was nobility, but it was for a fleeting moment. He's jealous of Guts and Casca. He feels he's losing all that made him Griffith. He tries to rape Casca in a pathetic attempt to feel strong. He thought this woman, who worshipped him like a god, would clearly want it, but she doesn't. And besides, his body is weak. Griffith is no longer himself. He tries to escape to chase his dream, but he crashes into a nearby lake. He nearly takes his own life, and with this despair, activates his Behelit. He summons the God Hand and sacrifices the Band of the Hawk. They get branded for death. He becomes Femto, cripples Guts, and rapes Casca, forcing him to watch. And then the anime ends. But it's the beginning of one man's journey to kill his former best friend. What if Guts lost to Griffith here? Or maybe, what if they just came to a peaceful resolution? What would have happened? We see a glimpse of what would have happened if Griffith was nursed back to health. He would live with Casca, have a son with her. They would name him Guts. He would live a humble life, but be unhappy, or at the very least, wanting more. A man who lives in regret. If Griffith killed Guts, the story would conclude with a mostly happy ending. We would simply have a story without Guts. Griffith and the Band of the Hawk would be knighted. They would own land. Griffith would marry Lady Charlotte when the king passed and become the ruler. It would be a tragic underdog story and would leave the reader with a bittersweet ending. If only there was another way. If the most recent chapters were any indication, Griffith would be a majestic king. He'd win battles and have a prosperous kingdom. Griffith would most likely feel a great pain killing Guts, but his resolve to kill him leads one to believe that even though rash, he would be okay after a while. The underlying cause of Griffith's fall from grace was his emasculation. He lost so one-sidedly to Guts. A blade rested on his shoulder. His life was in Guts' hands. We see with his lay with Lady Charlotte, he carries a bruise from Guts. He wasn't okay. He needed to feel like a man. so he had sex with the princess. Sex, the most primal and base way to feel like a man. Now what if Griffith defeated Guts and put him in his place? No death, but simply a win. Would Casca get her wish? Would everything return back to normal? Would Guts just go along with everything Griffith wanted? That would be hard to tell. At this point in the story, Guts was very clear on his ambitions to never serve another man. You see, during his year away from the Hawks, Guts spent time with the blacksmith Godo. He also participated in local strongman competitions, low-effort duels against big men who were there to entertain. It was a vacation for Guts, time he earned. He bummed around, and by the year's end, he asked why Godo is a blacksmith. He replies, saying it's a family trade. He doesn't even know why he swings his hammer anymore, similar to why Guts doesn't know why he swings his sword. But Godo remarks, he enjoys seeing the sparks fly off the sword. It's the small things. Guts realizes that it was all about perspective. Being a soldier under Griffith doesn't mean he has to swing his sword for Griffith. He can swing his sword for himself. If you're a fan of the manga, you'd see this as a beautiful yet tragic thing. As after the events of the eclipse, Guts swings his sword for himself, but it's for survival. He's fighting for himself, but under the conditions of another man. That is a cruel twist of fate. And he does so for a while, and eventually he swings his sword to protect his friends. If Griffith won, would Guts come to the same conclusion of swinging his sword for himself? Guts isn't the brightest character, so it's hard to tell. I'd like to think that eventually Griffith and Guts would have a similar conversation and everything would work out. But that's the problem with this duel. Communication. These characters chose to fight, rather than talk. Judo says that at the end of the day, they are still mercenaries.
We are still just mercenaries. We live by the sword and die by it.
But
This is a convenient excuse. You are now nobles. You need to accept that as your new way of life. Casca was the first to change. It's even noted by Judo. If everyone became a little softer, like Casca, maybe this would have been avoided. If Guts simply told Griffith, hey, I need to take a year off to find myself. I'll be with Master Godo near the base of the mountains if you need me. Griffith would likely reply, sure, do what you need to do. You're always going to be a hawk no matter what. I'll check in on you every now and again and bring the king's finest wine. Guts would reply, sounds like a plan. Thank you, Griffith. The story would then end and we'd have our happy ending. The 100-Year War has concluded, and we can now enjoy the fruits of our labor, but it wasn't destined to end. Berserk is not about happy endings. The story is about pain, suffering, and the cruel realities of humanity. The Behelit is an insidious plot point, and the echoed words of Zod had to become reality. The God Hand believe in the universal law of causality, or cause and effect. What happens will produce a result. Guts leaves the Band of the Hawk, which caused Griffith to lose himself, and then ultimately leading to the eclipse. You can trace this back to even the very beginning, Griffith having Guts join him. It caused him success, but the effect was his eventual downfall into the eclipse. Perhaps it would have been better if Guts never had joined or never came back to the Band of the Hawk, but it doesn't matter. The story is where it is now, and the only man who knows the answer is the author. Thank you everyone for watching. I had the need to put this video together. I watched the series again with my fiance Annie, and she really lost it when Guts won. It was such a one-sided victory, and we were talking about how important this scene was to the series. The eclipse simply wouldn't have happened if Guts lost, or maybe in some roundabout way it could have. You can't live your life in what-ifs. You need to be in the present, like those two characters, and what happens, happens. It's causality. With that being said, please feel free to subscribe and leave a comment. I do read them all and I do show them up on screen like this. Have a great day.